Bam.
Hey there, this is Felicity Nicole, and you are watching the Break It Down show.
Only good-looking people allowed on the Break It Down show. That's a rule. That's a rule.
I
Hey,
love it.
why not? Why not have a good time? It's the holidays. Let's
I know,
let's give
right?
ourselves a gift.
Where's our
There's a.
our cocktails? It's
Oh, I
like,
know. I know.
right?
We should be. Yeah,
Yeah,
I keep saying I'm going to start eggnogging, and if I don't hurry up and start eggnogging, I'm going to miss the whole eggnogging season. And
yeah,
we should be eggnogging right now.
yeah.
And but I don't have any eggnog because I never get to the damn store because you know what? I'm middle aged and I'm busy, and my life is simultaneously falling to ruin and as sweet as can be at the same time. You know what I'm talking about?
I totally get it. I've learned that my time is priceless, so I live on Instacart, and I don't want to. Yeah, yeah. And as it falls apart, it falls apart. You pick up the pieces and you put it's like a puzzle. You put it back together. That's all. Yeah.
In front of my desk right now, my bookshelf has just been reorganized. That bookshelf is halfway reorganized. There's a whole stack of junk and shit over here that's going to go out the door.
Good for
This
you.
right here around me is in mid chaos of being reorganized. My other half is going out the door to deal with aged parental crisis. We have no groceries in the house, and so in between, it's like we're just zipping around. Neither of us has really fully started the Christmas shopping process, and it's so crazy. I have a friend who just had a lung pulled out of his body. He has
Oh,
a cold. He's about to start chemotherapy, and he's like, "What am I got to complain about?" And so it's like
yes.
it, this is where we are. And I'm going to go back to the good looking people thing because we get so hard on ourselves. I'm too old. I'm too fat, and everything else. But if we look back at ourselves in 15 years, and we're like, "What are we complaining about?" And I try to keep that in my head. Like, look, I'd love to have more hair in my head, right? I'd love to weigh 50 pounds less or whatever it is. But if we get lost in that and we forget that, like, we are doing great, we're doing better than our parents did, and we're doing way better than our grandparents did. And if we lose sight of that, we will lose how sweet life really is.
Yeah, I do. I think you have to focus in on those small things in life for sure. Um, it's so funny you mentioned that because I just had a client leave and we were talking about that exactly. Like, he's a builder. He's like, I got nothing. Nothing's coming in. Like, what am I gonna do? I credits maxed out, this and that, and it's like, but you got your health,
Mm-hmm.
you got family. It'll all work
Yeah.
itself out. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a friend from Chicago. His marriage has probably just begun breaking up. And today, money's not, and money's really not ever going to be a problem. They've done well, right? And even when they divide everything in half, like you worry about that stuff, but largely we've figured all that out. Like, hey, this is how this works. And unless you want to fight over really small stuff just to get after each other, you don't have to do that for the most part anymore. They don't have kids. And so really it's just going to be nice and clean. Boom.
Yeah.
And then you can pay a bunch of lawyers to fight over scraps, or you can just be like, just take this. They both can make enough for themselves. And so if they can keep calm and do that, they can both become a healthier version of themselves. But I don't know that they will because we like to fight. But it's crazy how desperate we get to be a worse version of ourselves. How do we get past that? How do we help our friends get past that?
The worst version of ourselves. How do we get past
Yeah.
that? I think,
Yeah.
okay, so I think of Frank Gallagher. Let's just go to Shameless. That's like the worst version of ourselves, like just in the snow, passed out, urine all over, drinking. Like you need to hit that rock bottom in order to recognize your worst version of yourself, and then from there, you got to do the work. You have to do the work, and if not, you're just going to be like Frank. Which, by the way, I love Frank Gallagher. I love Shameless,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I'm like, it has to be rock bottom, and you have to recognize it. And sometimes it's hard to see. It's hard to look back and be like, whoa, like I partaked in that type of relationship. Let's talk about that for a second. One of those toxic dynamic relationships that I talk about like in my book. Like I partaked in that. I tit for tat. I hold myself fully accountable for not being mature enough to respond in more healthier ways. But I wasn't raised that way. I was raised in a freaking shit show of a family. Like, it was just crazy. Sorry for swearing, but
But show describes it, right?
it does. It was. I mean, we raised ourselves. It was the best childhood ever. I thought it was. It was a child of the 80s. We had no parental guidance. We left when the sun was up and we came home when the sun was down. you know? Yeah. But we weren't taught. Yeah. Healthy boundaries, how to communicate, all that stuff.
Some of that stuff, though, I've come to realize as an adult was not healthy, but some of that was, that as parents, and I'm going to put Gen X on the spot here because we think awfully highly of ourselves, but we love to monitor our kids. We love to tell them exactly what to do. We don't give them the same kind of freedoms. We would say, "Hey, mom, dad, we're going to prom night. Probably going to the beach on Saturday morning or Sunday morning, depending on how prom worked. We'll be back. I don't know. Sometimes, maybe 4:00 the next day. See ya." It's a daughter, by the way. Like, bye bye, honey.
Have fun
with their 19-year-old boyfriend.
Yeah,
have a good time. That would never happen today. You would have chaperones everywhere. Oh my God, don't take a limo. It's just so different now. And our kids are more anxious, and millennials kids too are more anxious. They're more nervous. We are on their asses in a way that I don't know is any better. So have we learned? Are we doing a better job?
I think what happened is, because I'm a Gen Xer, we became helicopter parents. Yeah. We're hovering over them, and that's where the anxious is. Yeah. And then we don't teach them life skills because we're doing it all for them. I just had this conversation with my client. I'm like trying to get my son to get another summer job. I'm like, you better start thinking about it. He's going to be 16 in January. He's like, oh no, mom, no, I got to focus on baseball. I'm going Division I. I'm like, no, I don't want to break your heart, kid, but you're going to get a job. Yeah. Yeah. And the chances of going Division I, playing baseball, he's a good ball player, but you need to have some balance in there. You need to teach these kids work ethic. That's one thing I've noticed. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And like that balance thing, right? Like you want to teach kids adversity, but also you don't want to break them, right? You don't want to teach them the kind of adversity that you're like, oh my gosh, you've had too much adversity and now you're scarred in a way, or you've invented, like I had so much, home was so dangerous that I didn't realize that home could be a good place. And as I got older and I saw a loving home, I thought that was phony. I thought my friends had loving homes, and I'm like, you guys put me on, and I realized as an adult, like, no, that's a loving home, and those are normal. The house that I grew up in had plenty of love in it, but there was always like the gunfights that would happen. I'm metaphorically speaking, and I was like, oh my gosh, you actually can have a loving, caring home where folks actually care about each other, and then that comes down to the kids. And so there was love, but it was mixed with hate and anger and abuse.
Yeah, you grew up like I did. That it sounds like, yeah. I remember. Yeah, I can remember going to dinner at one of my girlfriend's houses, and I'm like, whoa, they sit around the table. Wow, they talk to each other. There's napkins. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Nobody's fighting over food. Yeah.
Yeah. We were always afraid. And so my brother and I were subversive towards my dad. We would do things that were imperceptible, but were designed to perturb him, as our means of getting back at him. And we just did little things. And
My My man Pete, you are frozen. There you go. There you are.
Oh, there I am. I'm back now.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
like, you're
yeah. So we would mess with him and try to aggravate him. He wouldn't know why. He just knew he was being fucked with, because
yeah.
that was our mechanism for trying to deal with his volatility.
Okay, so he was an angry dad.
Yeah, and unpredictable. That made the anger very scary. And so, like, when my mom would say, "We have to ask your dad," it'd be like, "I'm going to do it anyhow,"
Yes.
and I would just go through, or I would sack up and I'd be like, "All right, I'm going to ask him," but I'd be terrified to do it.
Yeah.
But I would force myself to have to do that. And sometimes he'd be like, "Yeah, of course. Why would I say no to that?" And I'd be like, "Whew, who knew?" And it was these very trying and scary things. Or I just wouldn't ask, and I would just assume no and not do that thing.
Yeah. That's those moments are scary. I can relate to that. That's how my ex-husband was.
Yeah. Speaking of husbands and relationships and divorces and stuff, we all have friends. We've been this person ourselves, or we know these people, where they routinely pick the wrong person,
Oh,
and they put it on the other person. The other person has a role, but you're like, if you would slow down and be a better version of you, and spend some time picking a better person, maybe you would get a better person.
yeah.
Yeah,
We repeat those patterns. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, totally. It's like yes. Oh my goodness. We repeat those patterns so much. If you don't heal and take accountability for your own mistakes and relationships and how you function, you're going to repeat the pattern. You're going to attract the same type of person, the same type of energy until you do that work. And then you start to vibrate up. And then what's even more interesting is that you may, as you do the work, may still attract a wounded individual, which means, because we mirror each other in relationships, which means that there's still some deep-seated woundedness inside of us. And I'll give you a perfect example. I speak about this in the new book that I'm writing on. I had somebody rip off a Band-Aid. Okay, here I am. I've done all the healing. I've done all this and that. And it was a man who happened to say something to me. And it felt like a Band-Aid that got ripped off. And it was like the 15-year-old girl was like, oh my God, I was heartbroken. I was second best again. I'm not number one. Yeah. And my husband's like, well, first of all, you're married. I said, I know, but you don't understand how it felt for him to say something like that. Brought me back to that wounded 15-year-old that was like never good enough to be the one, but good enough to be the one to fool around with. Yeah. So I was like, okay, I have some more work to do with her. Yeah. That's how that stuff comes up. And if we're smart enough, we can catch it. If not, we're just going to continue to spin and spin and spin and spin and spin. Yeah.
I have a belief that life will continue to offer you the same lesson in shittier and shitty versions until you. So I talk to high school kids from my high school that I grew up in every year, the seniors, because I'm like, hey, I'm you from the future, and I'm here to be honest with you. I don't talk to them like a parent. I talk to them like a peer, and I'm like, here I am. And so I tell them, it's one of the things I say, like, life will give you the same lesson, and you will be offered it in a little lesson, and you'll be like, fuck that lesson. I'm gonna do what I want to do. And life will be like, all right, here's the next version, and this one's gonna cost $500, and you're like, yeah, fuck that lesson. And then it'll be like, here's the even worse version, right? And so I have a belief that happens, and we slowly acquiesce to what life says and offers until we're like, oh, this isn't worth fighting. This is actually smarter just to take care of the $25 version of this lesson up front. Like, I just call it life tax. Like, oh, this thing has happened. C'est la vie. Here's the money. Let's move on.
Yeah. I like to say that it's God's way of testing us, right? So I have no idea what your belief system is in. I'm not one of those, but I just will say that I have seen him test me to the point to where I'm like, okay, like I freaking surrender. Like whatever you're trying to teach me, like throw some mercy my way, dude. I just like throw the words in front of me. Obviously, I am missing the bigger picture here. Oh yeah, it gets harder. They do until you learn that lesson. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to ask, because I see in the notes here that you're working on a theology degree. And so I do want to explore that with you. What is your belief set, and what drove you to take on this type of degree?
So I am born, raised Catholic, right? Isn't that what we all say? We're born, raised
Sure.
Catholic, right? Nobody says it's hard to ever get an adult to say, I'm an active practicing Catholic, right? It's we're born and raised. So born and raised Catholic, and then just pulled away from just Christianity in general. Just, didn't realize that God is the center of my life. And I think because of that, because of what I grew up with, the life I led, the choices I made, he's like, I'm going to let you, because we have free will, right?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until I was in my first marriage that I was like, holy shit, like I'm going to be dead if I don't get out of this. And so I turned to prayer. I went back to church. And then from there, I really tapped into my spirituality and discovered that, the Holy Spirit's with us. God's with us. One thing I always tell my clients when I'm either speaking to them or with them personally, when you're dealing with abandonment issues, one way to just shift your perspective completely is if you can realize that, yes, you have been abandoned by everybody that has loved you, but you've never been abandoned by God. Your God has never left your side. It will shift that perspective just right there. Yeah. So that's where the theology is, because I have questions. I have answers. Why did we pull all the good women out of the Bible? Like, that's where I'm coming from. I want to I want the deep details. That I'm curious.
When you're looking into theology, then are you studying a Dominican, or is it not a Catholic type theology, or are you doing a Christian based theology? What is your pursuit?
So right now it's Catholic.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there an ordaining in your future, or is this more of a?
I hope so. I hope
Okay,
so. I want to run a Catholic mass.
Okay.
Yeah, that's like where I'm at, and I test those priests. Yeah.
Is there a particular book or a particular scholar within the faith that you align with? Paul, or gosh, I mean, there's so many that have written. Even from a philosophical point of view, there's,
Go back to
when
Plato.
folks. Who?
Plato. Go back to Plato.
Okay.
Let's just go back to Plato. Like if you study early Christianity, where it began, early Christianity starts with Platoism. Yeah. And it's all based on what we were talking about, Pete? Life lessons.
Right.
Which is, to me, it's karma. It's almost relative to Plato's, almost relative his thought process of like Hinduism. You go up, you become one, you go down. You go up, you do life again, you come down. But then man has changed the word so much, it's just not the same. But I work a lot with Mary Magdalene.
Okay.
I prefer to get into the women of the Bible. My goal is I say the old me, because I still think I'm 15.
Right.
The old me wants to teach at the university level the women of the Bible, because I think if we had that divine feminine energy still in there, I don't think the world would be where it is yesterday, today, and in the future.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the and I'm not a Bible scholar, but my dad had, on the good side of my dad, he had this theological degree and background, and part of his learning it, he would say it to me to get it out of his head so he could hear himself say it. So he taught me a lot of theology. And so I learned about Augustine, and I learned about Paul, and I learned about all these cats. And his theology degree was on the Presbyterian side. But you learn about these things and these concepts, and it's amazing what you're open to, because you understand that, look, if you remove the dogma and you remove the faith from all of this stuff, these are still scholars, these are still philosophers, and if you allow yourself to get past those things, even as an atheist, you can get past these things and understand that when Paul writes, he's writing about love, and every atheist needs love, and every atheist needs to understand what Augustine brings, and any of the big spiritualities have their people, their philosophers who guide all of us. And if you don't tend to your soul, your spirit, your mind, your body, and your soul, if you don't tend to that thing, it atrophies, it doesn't do well, and you're not going to be a good member of the community. This is what Pete believes.
Yeah, I love it that you just said that, because that's the basic preaching of a lot of them. That's what Jesus preached, was Christ was just love, just love. If we could get back to that pure form of love, man, we wouldn't be where we are today.
Yeah.
I love it.
I'm not great at these things. You're supposed to fail at them because they're supposed to be hard. But, I try to extend grace, just like even in social media. It's like I wouldn't act this way in public. I wouldn't jump into every conversation I interacted with, like, oh, that's a conversation, let me jump in and be an asshole. I wouldn't do that. If you were walking down Rush Street going to go get some lunch, I wouldn't be like, hold on, let me jump into this thing. Fuck you. I wouldn't
That's
do
total Chicago. Walking down Rush Street, watching the guy pee in the corner.
Yeah.
And I'm with my girlfriend going, oh my God, he's literally just peeing right there. we went Chicago. We got hustling. The best thing ever that I just saw, we're going to take a total tailspin on this.
Yeah.
I just saw was South side of Chicago people saying, we aren't going Democrat. We aren't going Democrat. They don't care for us. Opening their eyes, just crazy. I am like, woohoo. They're realizing how our city has just been destroyed over the past 4 or 5 years. Yeah.
It's crazy. I do want to take a walk with this, because communities are suffering. And when you look at, and this is not political, right? But when you have a policy, a system of running a city, and it's suffering, we have to step back and look and go, is what we're doing working? Like, it doesn't matter what your belief set is within, like, look, I live in California, and California is so far left, there are parties within the party. And we become very, and I'm going to say conservative, because we don't want to change. And so forget about Republicans, because they're not in play here. We have like the Sierra Club, and you're like, hey, we need to change how we process water, because we're struggling with water. Right now we have plenty because we had a bunch of storms, but that's going to stop. And we know that the planet's getting warmer and rain is going to be a little chaotic. So we need to change how we manage water. No changes. And I'm like, okay, you're the conservatives now.
Yeah.
So you have these things, these problems. Like like right now, Oakland is in the news, and San Francisco has been in the news. And it's because these are places where athletes are like, hey, it's expensive to live there. The taxes are high. That costs me money. And I'm trying to maximize how much I make. And my wife is like, hell no, I'm not bringing my kids there. And Oakland and San Francisco are hurting. And so the people there are like, that's not true. Look how nice it is. Like, well, I'm from Oakland. I know that area.
Yeah.
And you can drive around the nice parts where crime is not as much of a problem, but I know better. And so if you show the bad parts and you talk about all of the horrible things about Oakland, you have to be able to say, hey, some of what we're doing is not working. Is it better than it was 50 years ago? Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But today, right now, you have to look at and take an inventory. Chicago is hurting in a lot of ways. I lived in Chicago 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I lived in Chicago, and it is not how it is right now.
No, but you lived during the era of the dailies. Daily was like mob. I don't
Yeah.
ever forget when Daley Jr. decided to rip up Mig's field in the middle of the night. I mean, it got done. There was
Yeah.
none of this. And,
Yeah.
it's unfortunate because it goes down to, it goes down to the border crisis. And I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, like you said, politics, but it goes down to the border
Yeah.
crisis. And what's going on is the African American communities in the South Side are struggling to begin with. You've got food deserts, no job opportunities, broken homes, and they're putting up housing for these migrants. And they're like, we don't want this here. We want this
Right.
instead. We want this instead. How about this instead? And the city isn't responding that way, just like you said. It's just brokenness upon brokenness. But I love to hear that their voices are finally being heard.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Well, and also, some of us have memories, and remember there was a place called Cabrini Green, and when the answer is, hey, let's build housing, okay, but haven't we tried this? How do we do a better job of it? And again, we have to get better at picking these things out and sorting these things out. And when there is a lot of gun violence, and it is in a city where we've tried to solve this problem and we haven't solved it, and I don't want to get too distracted by these things, but we have to look within our own policy, within our own politics, within our own party, and say, is this working? And don't just say, oh, we need more money, because we always say we need more money. Like, oh, how do you pay for it? Well, we'll just charge more taxes. Well, who are you going to tax? Well, the people we always tax. Okay, well, then why does it always take more money? When you have to ask these questions. And the other side is just as guilty as having problems and not being able to solve these problems. So there's always going to be problems. So yeah, I look at Chicago and I've got friends that live there, and in some ways they're doing great. In other ways they're like, it's never been more expensive and we're thinking about leaving.
Yeah.
And that doesn't help either.
Yeah.
You can only tax so much until some other states like, how about you come to Texas? And people take them up. Or Nashville's booming because Nashville's like, how about you just come down here and your money will go further? And people are like, we'll go to Tennessee.
Yeah. I've got friends looking. You can't get a house. They're snatched
Right.
up that fast. And they're either going to Indiana, Wisconsin. Yes. Yeah. Let alone the Mag Mile looks like garbage. It was beautiful.
Who wants to take out a lease there right now? It's different. So when I lived, the last place I lived in Chicago was on Sheffield, across from Wrigley, directly across. Like out my front window was the right field wall, and we had a homeless person who had snuck into our stairwell. If anybody's watching the rooftop houses across from Wrigley, we all have closed stairwells, and so to get in, you had to sneak in, or you had to slide in as the door was shut. And so we tried to get the guy out. Hey, get out. You can't. But he wouldn't move. And so we called the police. That's what you have to do. And it was a big dude and a tiny lady cop. They showed up, and the cop shows up, and they kind of kicked the guy with their foot, and he wouldn't move. And so the cop says, "Hey, man, you gotta." And as he's saying, "Get out of here," the chick cop takes her baton and is coming down on him, and bam, it starts hitting him before the cop even says, "Get out of here." And as he's finishing "Get out of here," she'd already hit him twice. And that homeless guy's like, "Ah!" And then he got out of there and he never came back. They don't do that anymore. Now, that's better, but they still had this homeless problem, but they handled it differently. And there's a lot more homeless on the street. I don't know why. I can't fix that problem, but there are a lot of problems out there.
Yeah, that is uncalled for. And when we had that Safety Act that was going to pass, I printed off all 780 pages of whatever it was, and I'm reading it. And I came across a lot of dirty crap that our PD was doing to Black men. And so I understand the system is broken, the system needs to change. And it starts at home. Ultimately, it starts at the house, it starts with the family, this and that. But I have zero tolerance for stuff like that. And I think there's other ways of handling it. And I think the reason why you're seeing so many homeless is because of the mental illness. There's the hospitals. I mean, you can hold them for 24 hours? And yeah. So
Yeah. It's terrible. So
yeah.
when you look in terms of like, coaching and spirituality and all these things, how do you heal a community? I mean, so again, in the same place, um, parking around the stadium is hard during the baseball season. And, we've got permits to park and, you don't park on the street. You can't do that, but we would park behind and the tow trucks would come around and they, for a while, would purposely tow our
Mhm.
cars, even though we had permits. And so we go to our alderman. We'd say, hey, they keep towing our car. And the guy would be like, well, what do you want me to do about it? I'm like, well, we're allowed to park there. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, and they're charging us. He's like, what does it cost to get your car out? And I'm like, $200. And they're like, did you pay the $200? Like, yeah. Like, all right. And they're like, but like, this is what they're doing is illegal, and it was like this whole racket. Like, are you? And so now, even if that alderman's not on the take, I now have to believe that they're on the take,
Hmm.
and instead of dealing with this problem, you're like, all right, so I'm a victim here. And this is that life tax. You're like, oh, I get it. I'm just going to pay $200. Can I just give you the $200?
Yeah.
Is that what we do here? Just be honest about it. If that's what's going on. And if it's not what's going on, then talk to me. And so you learn these crazy lessons, but that's what Chicago is about. And so it makes you not trust the system. And every single time there's a sticker or a permit or anything, it's like, this is all going to line somebody else's pocket. And it's never enough money because I'm giving everybody else money and it's still not enough. My car is still going to get towed. And
You got it.
and how do you deal with that? How do you improve that stuff? Like, that causes harm in a way that the community can't heal from. Chicago is great in so many ways, but in so many ways, Chicago is not great.
I just think we need common sense. I think let's just fire everybody, right? If we could in pretend land, let's just fire everybody. And I really think it's just common sense. You need some common sense. When it comes to certain areas, you need common sense and a lot of social services.
Okay.
And yeah. And perfect example is if we could just extend grace to people. And I'll give you an example. I was going to my local Target and there's a homeless vet with this dog. And I spent 22 years in the veterinary industry. And I'm like, oh my God. Okay. Homeless man. So when I was at Target, I made sure I brought, 2 big bags of food and tons of treats and waters and that. And I saw a cop there and I'm like, do you mind if you just follow me over? I just want to drop this off. I don't know the man. I don't know if he's going to hurt me or anything like that, just to be on the safe side.
Right.
That's it. And, he came walking over and the cop's like, I'm just here just to make sure everything stays safe. And I'm like, what's your dog's name? And he's like, it's Road Dog. I'm like, what's your name? You want to know my name? I'm like, yeah, what's your name?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you got a soul, you got a spirit. Yeah. He's like, I'm Jeff. Yeah.
I'm Jeff.
I'm like,
I exist.
Jeff, it's nice to meet you. I'm Felicity. And this is stuff for you and your dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah. That time to help people exist. I love that. What does that do for the person, for you? Anybody who does that, who takes the time to allow someone to exist, to say hi, to check in on some people.
I can't take self-pleasure in it because then I think if I were to take self-pleasure out of it, then I would feel like I had an MO behind it, and I don't. I just want to make sure that the way I was raised, the way I'm gifted, I guess you could say, is that people matter. Regardless of what skin color, what economic status you are, people matter. So the homeless man on the street that I'm going to walk over, I'm going to give him a smile and look him in the eyes because you matter. You're somebody's child. Yeah.
Yeah. No, there is something to that taking the time to allow someone to matter. Even if it starts out by like, I'm going to take this intentional practice of doing that, and as a means of just being a better neighbor or, something to improve my own soul. And that's your goal. Just doing something like that. I think that is important. I had some ladies on the show the other day and they were talking about inter-race relations and how sometimes a particular ethnicity or race, if you want us to call it that, they don't want to be friends with someone from another race, and that's okay, and of course that's okay. But there's also that perception that it's not okay to engage somebody who, like, if a white person wants to say hi to a black person, um, because they're black, or if that's the perception of the black person to the white person, that somehow the white person is doing something wrong. And I didn't, it was uncomfortable for me, because if you're being polite and you're saying, hey, you're my neighbor,
Yeah.
I want to drop off, like in our neighborhood, we drop off food in each other's
Yeah.
doorsteps, or like, if you're having, like, I had a hernia surgery, and a bunch of the neighbors they organized themselves and brought dinner over, you
Yeah.
know, and it was just nice. Right.
Yeah.
And they were saying, like, but if you don't want to participate in that, you don't have to. And I'm like, yeah, well, of course. But, um, you know, it's overly combative. Like, of
Yeah.
course you don't have to, and we're not going to force you to, but it has nothing to do with ethnicity. It's just, yeah, you don't want to belong, but there is like this barrier that people want to put in there based upon ethnicity. That is, I wonder why folks in groups do that. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's the media. Sorry. I'm bus
Oh,
tossing
fair.
the media. They stir the
Yeah.
pot. The media stirs the pot. They
Hmm.
totally do. We could go into some really heavy conversations about it. There are some really great books out there to read on both sides of the fence, but I think the media deliberately makes it about race,
Yeah.
makes it, makes, baits us against
Mm.
one another. Um, like you said, skin color, whatever. It just doesn't, to me, it doesn't matter to me.
Right.
I don't know if you heard the story. My Orkin, I think it's my Orkin kid. I call him a kid.
Hmm.
He's a man. I've known him for 8, 9, 10 months.
Right.
He's a kid from the city, young man from the city. I love the guy. I first time I met him, I'm like, I like your energy. I can feel people. I can feel people's energy. And so he comes once a month, and he's playing with my dogs, and I always check on him, and how you doing? What's life like? That's just who I am. And I could feel he was off that day. And I'm like, you're not opening up. What's going on? You're quiet.
Mm.
Something's wrong. And he's like, oh, nothing. And then he told me that he's homeless.
Mm.
That he was living in his car.
Yeah.
And that hurt my heart. That hurt my heart hard.
Yeah.
That hurt my heart hard, because this is a good guy. This is a hard-working good guy. And he happened to just, without giving away too many details, just not a really good family life. And he's living in his car or sofa hopping. And I wrote him a check for $1,500.
Right.
And I just
Yeah.
said, here you go. Consider it a gift from God. And when it's your time to pay it forward, you pay it forward to someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there. I've been there so many times, almost homeless
Yeah.
with my son. I get it.
There's a lot to be said for that. I often talk about, see, I'm neither right nor left, but I am, like, focused on action, and a lot of problems are just what I call $1,200 problems, and you get wrapped up in something, and it becomes bigger and bigger, and it just gets past your means, and you're just like, I don't, and you give up. You're like, maybe I could go get $1,200, but that's going to take me, I don't know, 6-8 months, and I don't have 6-8 months, and that means if I do it perfectly, and I don't know, I'm going to give up in that amount of time. I've been there too.
Yeah.
And it's like, and someone has $1,200, and they can, like that, and they can solve that problem for me, and I'll do my best, and I get back in that position, but I don't have the ability to do that right now, and I'm credentialed. I've got all kinds of things, and I'm in this situation, and I don't know how to get out of it, and it gets worse, and then you get two $1,200 problems, and now it's impossible.
Yeah.
And we can do that over and over again. It just takes the right person to come along, and all kinds of people care. But so many times we look at a system, like we just been complaining about Chicago. And I just read a thing on X about a program where, like, we in LA, where they gave homeless people $750 a month, And you can have all the conversations you want about the viability of the program and the parameters of the program. But 5 people could pool $150 a month and go do the same thing and go find a homeless person and see how it does for them. And they can, with their own eyes, to see if it works. And they can just fucking do it, and just say, hey, you know what? We took this homeless person. We figured out what they actually need and get them to help. There's all kinds of help.
Yeah.
And we couldn't do it. But then we picked another one and we tried and we tried and tried. And maybe you help one person. It's not easy to do, but we can do it if we did it instead of complaining about some system that we don't like or we like or whatever. But too many times we don't write that check. We don't take that time, And what does it take? Does it take 10 hours a month between 5 people? All right, go do it. See if you can get a person off the streets. If it took you 5 hours a month individually and $150 a piece to get a person off the streets, would you do it?
But let's play devil's advocate. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't want to get off the street.
Well, fair enough. Right?
Yeah.
And I'm not even sure that little amount of money would actually do it. Like that was the claim, right? And
I know.
What other resources were brought in? What was the problem? Is the person schizophrenic? You're not getting that person off the streets. Not without some kind of professional help, right?
Yeah.
But if you were going to complain about a system, go do it.
Yeah.
Go out and try to fix something.
Yeah. Go hit your local town hall.
Yeah.
Start hitting the meetings,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can't write $1,500 checks for everybody. Something was in me that told me to do that. So maybe it was God just working through me. I don't know. I know the kid, he came over for Thanksgiving. He spent Thanksgiving with us. I consider him family. I just, for whatever reason, there might be a soul contract with him and I have no idea. It's just, he's a good young man.
Yeah.
And he's out there doing it right. And so, sometimes we just need to be rewarded in different ways.
Yeah, no, that's true. And you don't have to adopt more than one person. There's one, one person is a lot. And if we could each do that, all of a sudden there aren't that many homeless people. There aren't that many young kids that need to turn it around. A mentee is a powerful thing. You coach people, and if you take 5 people that need a little bit of help and you get them going in the right direction and they each take 2 or 3 people or all of a sudden there's a whole lot of people helping a whole lot of people, right? It makes a bit of a difference. Tell me about your magazine. Let's talk about that.
Oh my God. You mean this 15 years in the making? Like, hello.
Yeah.
I am so proud. So She Is You, this beautiful magazine for midlife women that are just seeking redirection, reinvention. I say it's not your mama's midlife magazine. It's not like the Women's Day that I used to see or Modern Woman, whatever that was, like on my grandmother's coffee table, because we talk relevant taboo topics,
All right.
Sex and menopause. What's it like with menopause? Dating after divorce. How do you recoup after divorce? Jeez. I mean, my God, you lose half of everything. And especially in today's economy, like,
oh man,
I know everybody's going to work.
It's good, right? It's good.
Yeah. Huh? Right? They keep telling us that. Yeah. I just, so we talk all that relative, and then we throw in just some fun stuff. I've got a design degree, so I have to throw in design stuff in there. Premiere issue, fall in November, November, December. I think it came out in the end of November. So that's fall and winter. Spring and summer is coming out in March.
Okay.
And it's $29.99 for the year. And it's amazing to see this grow. And I just want to make it better each time. How can I make it better each time? What can we talk about? Yeah. The empty nester syndrome. I mean, think about it, Pete. But your kids are gone.
Right.
And it's
my
like
kid is gone.
Yeah. And you're like looking at a wife or looking at yourself going, I don't know if I am.
Yeah.
Invested all of our energy into our children. And it's like, who am I? What do I like? Yeah.
Do I like you? Do you like me?
I know. I've been traveling baseball for, the past 15, 16 years. I'm like, what do I do now with my time?
Right.
Yeah.
Right, 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 right. Yeah, and what does normal feel like, right? And all those things. I love with when I go see my daughter, and she's got her boyfriend and they live together. I love just watching her and him. I just walk behind them. I just watch them encounter life. I just can't get enough of it. I think it's great. But they're both very calm and relaxed, and they're a great fit for one another. Like
Mhm.
it's wonderful. I love that. And I've got friends that are empty nesters, and they're doing great. But I also have friends, moms that are like, I've got to get a tattoo with my kids' names on it, and we're trying to figure out how to deal with the fact that they're not here because they've been so invested in their lives, especially the moms, because
Mhm.
they've sacrificed self for their kids because they're moms and that's what they do.
Yeah.
And they've had to get through this rough transition while going through menopause, and it's tough on them. And you can say all the things, but that doesn't mean they feel and believe, because they were defined by who their kids were and how their kids were doing, and all of their conversations. It was really tough though. Like they would talk and talk and talk, and I'm like, every single conversation you guys have is about your kids. And these are your friends, but it's like these are like,
There's
at some
something
point
else
we're
to
going to
talk
have
about.
different conversations. Yeah.
Yeah, autonomy. That's where autonomy comes in. It's like I am
Yeah.
a woman, I am a mother, and I
Mm-hmm.
am a wife, but we have
Mm.
autonomy. And I can figure out the empty nester syndrome on a beach in Mexico when my kid is in college.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I got 3 more years. And yeah, he's in college. And I just think I think we have, like you said, we just have totally as women, because of the helicopter parenting, because of our parents' lack of whatever, which was right or
Yeah.
wrong, we don't know. We've just thrown ourselves into our children. Oh my God, Bobby's got this play and that and this and that. And these
Yeah.
parents, oh my gosh, all these kids are in travel sports. And I'm watching these moms and dads. I'm like, when do you have time to have sex? You're gone all summer. Mom
Wait,
is
people
over
have
here with
sex?
one child. Dad is over
Right.
here with one child. I'm like, where's the sex? I'm like, do you even know your husband anymore? Do you even know your wife anymore? I would not do that. There would have to be a boundary. I,
Yeah.
I just, and that's where I get perplexed. When did the
Mm.
script flip where we now live for our children? Call me
Yeah.
selfish, but that's what I see.
Yeah. That's a big thing. It really is. And we all grew up with Dr. Ruth, and we would kind of giggle because we were kind of young, but she'll tell you, like, you've always got time to give your partner a hand job. Come on. She's like, and she'll say, I'm 97.
I know.
I'll give my partner a hand job anytime, and you're like, well, fuck, if this old lady can do it, I can do it, and you really can, like, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you do that for your partner? Like, why wouldn't you give them an orgasm? You love them, and that investment in each other, right? That continued investment in time. And look, I'm not saying that I'm the world's greatest person, and my special person is, but we try to spend time on each other. And look, we have so many things going on, but we try to say, okay, everything gets pushed back as best as we can. And this
Yeah.
is going to be our time, even if it's just carving out an hour
Yeah.
amongst all the chaos. We try to do that regularly because
Yeah.
it's important to maintain us.
Yeah.
And it's not
Yeah.
easy. And it's not easy,
No.
like, to be fully present when we do it, but we
Yeah.
do try to say, this time here we're going to take and book it, put it in your calendar, and say, this is not for anybody else.
So I got a funny story about that.
Yeah.
So Saturday night was our time, right?
Yeah.
So doors shut, dogs are outside whining because, God forbid,
Yeah.
my son is knocking on the door. I'm like, Mom, hold on a second. Give me 15 minutes. And then everything just falls apart. I'm like, so whatever. I walk out.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, what do you need? And he's like, I found it. Go back to doing whatever you were doing, Mom.
Yeah.
I'm like, well,
Yeah.
yeah. It's called sex, Doug. With my husband.
Yeah.
Adults do
Yeah.
that. I don't want to hear it, Mom. But
But yeah.
you
Right.
gotta, yeah. It's
Yeah.
normal to be. You're not going to hear it. We're not like, but it's normal to have that intimacy with your significant other, and it's normal to have that boundary of like, you see
Hmm.
that door shut? just don't knock unless the house is on fire. I'm going to hear the sirens going off. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we
It'll
do. We
all
choose
be
not to.
okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's it's interesting that we do surrender ourselves, and rightfully so, because our kids should be a very high priority. But it's okay to let them be their own first priority and us be our first, and then we're going to make sure we take care of each other and get there. All right, so we're going to run out of time here if we don't cover everything else. What do you want to get to and make sure we promote? Do you want to talk about the book? I mean, I think we've been talking about the book in the abstract a little bit, but what else do you want to get to before we wrap this
Yeah.
thing
So
up?
we got the magazine. That's today's Modern Midlife Woman's Magazine. So you can find that
Yes.
on the website. And then my memoir was picked up a few years ago, which was finally published earlier this year, which is Pieces of Me. And it's just about my life, totally screwed up. Childhood trauma, domestic violence survivor. I witnessed my dad attempt to kill my mom at the age of 10. My dad
Right.
was just this handsome Hispanic man that had a really weird side hustle. He was an enforcer for the Spanish mafia. And so he had some blood on his hands. And
Yeah.
he disappeared for about 12 years. My mom, God bless her, would shut down emotionally. She didn't date. She wasn't a drinker. Her vices was coffee and cigarettes, and she worked and she came home. So us three kids, we just had to figure out how to handle our emotions through very toxic situations. It just kind of I fell into that repeating pattern of my mom with meeting my first husband, who was an alcoholic. And it wasn't until my light bulb moment went on, I was like, I'm meant for something more. I could feel it. And so I write about that, how I ran out in the middle of a snowstorm in Chicago. It was an ice storm. I had $47 to my name after I paid the movers to move 3 pieces of furniture. And I made a promise to myself and God that I would be exactly where I am today. And so you want to talk about perseverance, determination, and just never giving up. I'm telling you, if I can do this, anybody can. It takes a lot of work, a lot of will, and a lot of sacrifice. But you got to, it's all about walking away from people that don't serve you and doing the work to improve you. Yeah.
There's a lady named Teresa Von Roy. She's from my hometown. She wrote a book called Wildflower, a very similar story. And her mom basically abandons her family and in San Francisco, and just says, "Hey, I'm moving today." Poof, and just takes off. And Teresa goes on and becomes a doctor, a physician. I should connect you guys. Yeah, maybe that's something that it just seems like you two should know each other, and I like to connect people. So I'll do that offline. But it's a similar thing, and she becomes a physician. This isn't supposed to work out. She's basically a wild kid on the streets of San Francisco, and her dad is around, but this is not someone that is. Her dad leaves, and her mom's like, "Hey, you guys are on your own." Basically, I think how that went. And it isn't supposed to work out, and she becomes a podiatrist. And who knows, and why does it work for the two of you at all? And then the next kid is never heard from again, and has a horrible life leading up to whatever happens at the end. And so it's an amazing thing that humans can be that resilient and come out. Look, you seem like a relatively nice lady, and someone I'd love to go down Rush Street and not jump into someone else's conversation and have a conversation and go do that.
Have some cocktails.
Have some cocktails and have a good time, right?
Yes,
Chicago's good for all that. Yeah.
This has been fun.
Yeah, just for fun. I found out, this is off topic, but I wanted to mention this to you because it's interesting. My mom is really big into the whole ancestry thing, and I've got a great and a great great grandfather that have Chicago roots, and they both were musicians, and they were and my grandmothers were also entertainers, and so they ran all up and down Chicago. In churches playing music and in the vaudeville / burlesque houses entertaining people in the early part of the 1900s. And it's just so crazy because she's starting to find what's left of the playbills and everything. And I'm like, oh my gosh, look at these people that are playing the violin and they're dancing and they're in churches on Sunday. And that's just a remarkable thing. And so one of the questions I like to ask, and I think this will work for you, is when do you belong to a place? And when does someone get to tell you when you do or don't belong to a place? Because apparently part of me belongs to Chicago, even though I get there myself through my mother's daughter. But apparently part of my history belongs to Chicago.
I'd say my home is Mexico. I wasn't
Okay.
born and raised there, but
Yeah.
I've got roots in Mexico. Home to me is when we go visit Mexico. I think it goes back. I think it goes to your roots. It goes deep down to that ancestral roots.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's where you belong. Yeah, I'll tell you right now, I don't feel like I belong currently in the neighborhood that I live in. I don't feel like I fit in. I'm a free thinker. I beat to my own drum. I'm not one that likes to fit in and belong. And I'm going to rock the boat and ask those edgy questions. And
Yeah.
Chicago, music. We don't have enough time.
Yeah.
Kingston Mines, the Stones. How many?
Yeah.
I've seen Buddy Guy play at
Oh,
Legends. That's what I'm saying. You just brought up something. Legends in January.
yeah.
Oh my God. With Bonnie Raitt on the stage. I'm telling
Yeah.
you, Chicago's food and music. Oh God, yeah.
Yeah. San Francisco's theater scene died out. It died. And the young folks there, the tech culture, they couldn't all the places that are like the Metro and all those places that are still open in Chicago, that's all gone. And I'm glad that Chicago still has it. I'm glad that Buddy Guy has an open mic in all kinds of places, because that whole thing, I hope it comes back. And this is when I was talking to a movie maker just yesterday. And, as AI takes over a lot of the pre-recorded industry, I'm hoping that those of us that know better will go out and see more live performances where you don't need amplified anything and you can go see Buddy Guy play, and you don't need any kind of anything other than the human interaction. You talk about vibrations, you have someone with a cello and you sit within 50 feet of that person, you'll be moved.
I play the cello. I suck at it, but I play. Yeah.
Hey, whatever,
Yeah.
You suck at it, but you know what it does. And when you see someone who's great at it and they can communicate to you and it's a meditation,
Mm-hmm. You are exactly right. Yeah. Exactly right. Yeah.
And people who watch the show know I love a pipe organ. There is no more powerful instrument. Like when a pipe organ and an orchestra play, an orchestra is powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And the pipe organ shows up and it's like a cat and a mouse.
Yes.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So anyhow, what questions do you have for me before we wrap this thing up?
I don't even know where to begin. I mean, we talked about so much.
We did talk about it.
Yes, we talked about so much. Yes. We could talk more next time. Let's do it.
That's what we'll do. We'll talk more next time. So everybody should first off, there's the link for Teresa. I'm going to link you to Teresa off mic, and so we'll do that later on. But the first thing I want you all to do is make sure that you meet over here to my links, is go to Amazon and get Pieces of Me. And that is right there below. You know what I will say? Buddy Reed, get 2 copies. It's the season, so get a book for your friend. Any of our authors, really support these folks. They take the time to write something beautiful, and they want you to do this. And you can always go do that. Instagram is the place where you should go to check out She Is You Mag. So just do that. You can go there. Look, you can type these things in. You guys know how to do all this stuff. And then there is there's Felicity's handle right there. Felicity _Nicole. Look, type in Felicity Nicole. You're going to find her. Yeah. And then the other thing is, let's see, did I get all of them? I think I got all
TikTok,
of them.
Okay. At the healing journey. I think TikTok is at the midlife healing journey. That seems to be where my biggest crowd is. TikTok.
Okay. I have that link. I just got to grab it. Give me 1 second, everybody, and I'll grab that link here. Hold on. Wait a minute. Let me put the link in it. TikTok. I don't do the TikTok, so I don't ever think about it, but I'm going to put that in here right now. Here we go. TikTok link coming into the notes for everybody who's watching. Bam. Boom. There you go. TikTok.
There we go. Love it.
And get yourself some Felicity Nicole. All right, let me run these credits. Stand by so I can say goodbye to you proper like. Everybody else, keep hanging in there. Got Will Riley tomorrow with, well, you're going to love the guest. Stand by.
Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much.